Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Let me welcome you to the fifth webinar of Sri Lanka Agricultural Extension Association. Sri Lanka Agricultural Extension Association has taken many initiatives in contributing to the food security and to enhance the agriculture sector of the country. Sri Lanka Agriculture Extension Association was started in 1990, and if we look back the almost the 32 years since its inception, from time to time, the association has taken initiatives to contribute to at national level and also at regional level in different times. The most recent involvement in Sri Lanka Agricultural Extension Association was in formulating the overarching agricultural policy of the country, where it came up with a specific recommendations for an enhancing policy. Unfortunately, we are seeing that not much of the things are taking place in the country, but that is the very reason why we as professionals should get together to aware, to support and to enhance the overall effort and productivity in the agricultural sector. Considering the present focus of the country, Sri Lanka Agricultural Extension Association the committee decided to have a series of webinars which are timely and which are quite important in terms of enhancing the food security of the country. Now, in this context, today we are going to focus on the contribution of the fisheries sector, to ensure food security in Sri Lanka. So we have the best person to do so, that is Mr. Dhammika Ranatunga, the Director General of the Ministry of Fisheries. And if I am to give a very brief profile of Mr. Ranatunga, he is a special grade officer of the Sri Lanka Administrative Service, and he currently serves as the Director General Technical of the Ministry of Fisheries. He also serves as a member of the Governing Council of the Ocean University of Sri Lanka. He is a member of the Board of Directors of the Agricultural and Agrarian Insurance Board and member of the National Environmental Council. Prior to the present appointment, Mr. Ranatunga held several key positions, including the post of the Director Development of the Ministry of Plantation Industries, General Manager of the Coconut Cultivation Board, Director General of the Coconut Development Authority, Assistant Secretary, Minister of Defense, etc. Mr. Ranatunga has significantly contributed to public policy making, development planning, and execution of development programs in the areas of plantation development, agriculture, rural development, and fisheries. Mr. Ranatunga holds a BSc Agriculture honors degree from University of Ruhuna, a Master of Public Administration degree from the Postgraduate Institute of Management of the University of Sri Jayawardhanapura, and a Master of Development Practice, advanced degree from the University of Queensland in Australia. He has also received professional trainings at the Near East South Asia Center for Security Studies of the National Defense University, Washington, USA, Asia Pacific Center for Security Studies, Hawaii, USA, and Institute of Rural Advancement, Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. So without further ado, I would like to invite Mr. Dhammika Ranatunga to enlighten us of the contribution of the fisheries sector to ensure food security in Sri Lanka? Mr. Ranatunga, over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Chandana, for your introduction, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. First, I would like to thank Sri Lanka Agricultural Extension Association and Dr. Talata Rupasinghe and Dr. Chandana Jayawardhan and other office bearers of the association for inviting me to speak about the contribution of the fisheries sector to ensure food security in Sri Lanka. As we all know, today is a working day. I think everyone is a little bit busy with their own work. Therefore, without taking much time, I will straight away go to my presentation. In this presentation, I am going to mainly focus on a few things. One is the role of fisheries sector towards food security in Sri Lanka, and what is the present situation in achieving food security through the fisheries sector, and what are the opportunities and resources we have to ensure food security, and what is our future, what is the way forward. So first, I would like to focus on contribution of different sub-sectors for food security in Sri Lanka, especially with regard to animal nutrients. We know meat sector contributes about 20% of the protein requirement and 17% of calorie requirement and about 31% of the fat requirement. And milks and milk product sector provides 40% of the calorie requirement, 25% of the protein requirement, and about 37% of the fat requirement. And eggs also contribute to provide 5.6% of the calorie requirement, 5% of the protein requirement, and 6% of the fat requirement. And fish and sea food sector caters to 33% of the calorie requirement, 50% of the annual protein requirement, and 18% of the fat requirement. So it is undoubtable that fisheries sector has a very big role to ensure food security, especially providing protein requirement of the people of Sri Lanka. But our per capita fish consumption is not very high. It is about 40 grams per day, and per capita fish consumption per year is about 15 kilograms per year. But we know there are some countries this goes up to 90 kilograms per year, and there are countries like Norway, Malaysia, where they have about 50 kilograms per year. So our rate is not very high, but it plays a formidable role in ensuring food security. And even in the previous slide, I have shown about this calorie, protein, and fat intake. And when we consider, if I give you a brief overview of the fisheries sector, its contribution to GDP is about 1.1%, and its contribution to export earnings is about 2.6%. Total fish production in 2021 is about 435,000 metric tons, and revenue from exports is about 318 million US dollars in 2021, and employment, the total employment in the sector is over 1 million. Then I will give you a brief idea about the natural resources we have to develop and sustain fisheries industry. With regard to marine fisheries sector, we have a coastline of 1,700 kilometers, and we have a territorial sea. Territorial sea means the sea area up to 12 nautical miles, 21,500 square kilometers, and we have a continental shelf. If we roughly say, it is the shallow bed area, that is the very rich area in natural resources like fish, gas, and other resources. We don't have gas and oil, but we have good fish resource in the continental shelf. And we have a exclusive economic zone of about 517,000 square kilometers. It is roughly 8 times bigger than our land mass. We have a very significantly a large exclusive economic zone where we are free to exploit fisheries resources. And when it comes to inland and aquaculture sector, we have about 122 lagoons in Sri Lanka. It is about 158,000 hectares, and mangrove zones, salt marshes, and mudflats, we have about 71,000 hectares, and we have over 1,000 reservoirs in Sri Lanka, about 44 major reservoirs, 93 medium reservoirs, and 1,200 minor reservoirs. And we also have about 1,000 seasonal tanks. So the capacity of perennial reservoirs is about 155,000 hectares, and capacity of seasonal tanks is about 100,000 hectares. And we also have willows and 103 rivers in Sri Lanka, where we can what we can use for inland fisheries and aquaculture. So direct employment in the fisheries sector is about 315,000. I said the total employment is more than 1 million, but if we consider direct fishermen only, there are more than 300,000 direct fishermen, about 224,000 in the marine sector, and about 91,000 in the inland and aquaculture sector. In this slide, I show you our fishing fleet. We have about 59,000 strong fishing fleet in Sri Lanka. About 49,700 are connected to marine fisheries, and about 9,900 are connected to inland fisheries. When you look at these marine fisheries crafts, there are several different categories. You know about multi-day boats. Multi-day boats are the vessels where people go to sea and stay in the sea for more than 45-50 days. There are 2 types of multi-day boats. Some multi-day boats are permitted to fish in the international sea. They are called high sea boats. About 1,194 high sea boats are there. And then we have other multi-day boats, about 4,000 other multi-day boats we have, which engage in fishing in the exclusive economic zone. And again, we have about 860 I-day boats, 860 I-day boats, and all these 3 categories, multi-day boats, other multi-day boats, and I-day boats, use diesel as their source of energy. And you can see that there are about 26,700 outboard engine boats. These outboard engine boats are the mechanized small boats. They are operated using kerosene. The problem is when we are unable to provide kerosene, which happened during last few months, when we are unable to provide kerosene to fishermen, then all these 26,787 boats cannot go to sea. Some boats employ 2 people, some boats employ 3 people. So if kerosene is not available, more than 75,000 people lose their livelihoods. That's a serious problem we currently face. And there are about 16,000 non-traditional, traditional non-motorized boats also in the fisheries sector. So total vessels in the marine fisheries sector is about 49,700. So then when I talk about food security, current food security issues in the fisheries sector, I can tell you that there are two major issues. One is availability of fish. Second problem is accessibility. When it comes to availability, we have two problems at the moment. One is there is a reduction in total fish production. There may be various reasons for reduction in total domestic fish production. Scientists always speak about depletion of resources, and recently we had fuel shortage, then high cost of production is another issue, then we had COVID-19 related restrictions. You will remember that our second COVID wave in Sri Lanka emerged in the Paleo fish market. So we had to close the fish market for several months. Those things also affected the reduction in total fish production. Then second problem is reduction in imports. You know, there are various problems to import things at the moment. We have a foreign currency crisis, and there are various import restrictions, and also we try to maintain high import duties to discourage imports. As the Minister of Fisheries, actually, we like to see a reduction in imports because our dream is to make the sector self-sufficient. But problem is, at the moment, there is a reduction in total fish production, and at the same time, there is a reduction in imports. So we have to carefully analyze and see whether this situation leads to a food security issue in Sri Lanka. Then the second problem is accessibility. Accessibility is also twofold. One is high price of fisheries products. Now we know everyone complains that they can no longer afford to buy fish. Even middle class, upper middle class people complain that price of fisheries products are too high. And then the low income people cannot afford to buy fish because we know the price of fisheries products are very high these days. Then the second problem is high perishability. We know fisheries products are highly perishable, and that is not a new issue. But the problem is, since last year, we have seen continued power cuts in Sri Lanka. Therefore, in regional areas, rural areas, the small level and medium scale level sellers cannot store fish. That's a huge problem because we don't have large cool rooms or refrigerator facilities in rural areas. So also people cannot store fish for several days due to continued power cuts, and that has also become a problem, that has also become an issue of accessibility. Then this slide shows our domestic production. I have mentioned that there is a reduction in domestic fish production. You can see it here. Our total production in 2018 was 527,000 metric tons. It went down to 5,000 in 2019, 428,000 in 2020, and 435,000 in 2021. But I must say that these 2 years, 2020 and 2021, are not normal years, and 22 is also not a normal year because we had a lot of other influences. which affected the reduction in domestic production. This year we had fuel-related issues. Last 2 years we had COVID-19 related restrictions. Anyway, we have seen a reduction of domestic production in Sri Lanka. This gives a better idea about this production because we have 3 main sectors: coastal fisheries sector, offshore deep sea fisheries sector, and freshwater and aquaculture sector. The coastal fisheries sector is mainly handled by the small boats. I said more than 26,000 small kerosene run boats in Sri Lanka. They are the boats which run in the nearshore area. But that is the biggest contributor for local fish production, and they also greatly contribute for local consumption, because most of the deep sea boats, offshore boats, multi-day boats, they cater to export market. So this coastal sector is very important for our domestic production, and there is a slight increase in the freshwater and aquaculture sector. You can see it very clearly in the next slide. That I have given the numbers for 3 years, 2019, 2020, and 2021. You can see high sea production has gone down, blue line. Then coastal fisheries production has significantly gone down, but there is a slight increase in inland and aquaculture production. The problem is this slight increase in the inland and aquaculture sector is not sufficient to offset the reduction in other 2 sectors. Then this gives an idea about exports and imports. I have told you that there's a reduction in imports. You can see it very clearly that quantity of imports have gone down from 120,000 in 2015 to 56,000 in 2021. So there is a very significant reduction of imports over these years. There are various reasons for this reduction, but we have to see then what are the main items we have imported. You can see in this yellow line the main items we have imported over last several years. One item is dried fish. We have imported about 10,000 metric tons of dried fish throughout past few years. And next one is dried spreads, salmessa. Actually, this dried spreads is a very, very important item in our food basket because doctors also say it's a very, very nutritious and very, very important item for small children and other special categories. So we have imported about 25,000 metric tons of dried spreads all these years, because unfortunately we cannot produce sufficient spreads. We cannot catch sufficient spreads from Sri Lankan waters. We do catch the spreads in some areas like Mullatiu, in the north, and also in some areas in the deep south, but that quantity is not sufficient to cater to our demand. So we have imported about 25,000 metric tons of dried spreads, and even under very difficult conditions we have maintained that quantity. So even 2021 we have imported 25,000 metric tons of dried spreads because it is an essential item. And next important item is canned fish. We have imported about 49,000 metric tons of canned fish in 2015, but it went down to 8,000 metric tons in 2021. There is a reason for that. Because earlier canned fish was totally imported. But now, at the moment, we have 12 canned fish manufacturing facilities in Sri Lanka, the big operators, and there are few small time operators as well. So now we are in a position to produce substantial number of canned fish in Sri Lanka. Therefore, we can reduce canned fish imports, and that has happened, and we want to continue that trend in the future as well. Then here I am going to show you about supply of dried fish to the market. Our dried fish local production is more than 50,000 metric tons. In 2018, we have produced 61,000 metric tons of canned fish. That year, we have imported only 8,900 dried fish from overseas, other than spreads. I told you that we have to import spreads, and we have to keep on importing spreads because we cannot produce that amount in Sri Lanka. But now we have the capacity to produce dried fish, because we need to produce some 10,000 metric tons more in Sri Lanka, which we are trying to do here. So if we are able to produce 10,000 more dried fish in Sri Lanka, we don't need to import dried fish. But there are problems, because some variety preferences are there. So most of the people, even when you go to a dried fish shop, you might ask for katta. We say, I want to have some katta karola. But this is something we cannot produce in Sri Lanka. We do produce, but then we have to import the raw material. So there are some issues, but in that kind of varieties, we can import the raw material and produce it here. That is what we are going to do right now. Then this is the canned fish supply in Sri Lanka. You can see what I have told earlier, that our domestic production was 3,600 in 2018, but it has gone up to 9,200 in 2021. Our imported volume was about 28,000 in 2018. It went down to 8,700 in 2021. Next slide gives you a very clear picture about this. Our local production is shown in orange color. You can see earlier we imported a lot of canned fish and produce a little bit of canned fish, but 2021, 2022, now we produce a significant amount of canned fish in Sri Lanka. We only import a small amount of canned fish from overseas right now. So the next problem is, I told you, the price. I think this yellow color column gives you a idea about the price compared to last year. You can see the different varieties. Tora, Para, Galmalu, Talapat, Balea, Kelawalla, Salea, Hurulla, Issa, Linna. And compared to last year, the price has gone up by 59%, 83%, 103%, 64%. That's a very significant increase. But only good thing is, now the prices has started going down a little bit. For example, now compared to last month, price has gone down. The column before the yellow column gives you an idea about the price compared to last month. You can see that there is a decrease of 5%, 13%, 25%, like that. The only reason is now in last 2 months, we were able to provide the continued supply of fuel, diesel for multi-day boats and kerosene for small boats. If we are able to provide fuel continuously, I think we will be able to bring down the price a little bit, but not to the last year level, because the fuel is the major input for fisheries operations, and fuel price has significantly gone up compared to last year. Therefore, we cannot bring down the fisheries price to the last year level. This is the retail price of dried fish. You can see there's again huge increase compared to last year: 69%, 61%, 48%, 41%, 57%, 58%, 93%. Huge increase. Then next slides give you an idea about the price increase of canned fish. That has affected significantly, and imported canned fish price has gone up by 198%. Locally produced canned fish price has gone up by 211%. Now they are facing a problems because they cannot sell enough canned fish in the local market, because people cannot buy canned fish at this rate. So there are good reasons for increased market price also. One thing is non-availability of fuel for fishing operations. That has happened during last few months. Then only a small quantity came to the market. Therefore price increase, and cost of fuel has also gone up significantly, and cost of other inputs like ice, baits, fishing gears, engine oil, gas, labor, everything has gone up. And also the price of substitutes like chicken, egg, other meat types, they all have gone up. Therefore, fish price has also gone up. And then I'll very briefly present you something about the way forward. In the marine fisheries sector, we have 3 key objectives: sustainability, availability, and accessibility. We want to increase production, but we want to increase production through reduction of post-harvest cost loss, because we cannot, with the present fleet, with the present set of technology, we cannot hugely increase the harvest. But we can reduce the post-harvest loss, which is a very significant portion of the harvest. We are trying to do that. We have several projects with the support of FAO and some other organizations. Our NARA is doing research on that. And we also try to develop infrastructure, introducing new technology, and also try to establish artificial fish breeding sites in the nearshore area. And we also try to reduce cost of production, again through reduction of post-harvest loss. If we can reduce the post-harvest loss, we can reduce the cost of production. Then we also try to do it through new technology, increasing fuel efficiency, and also through forecasting of fishing sites. And also we try to improve social welfare. We are going to introduce a new pension scheme. Actually, now agriculture sector pension scheme was launched this week. We are also going to launch the same scheme with the support of the Agrarian Insurance Board, the pension scheme for fishermen, and new insurance scheme. Then we are also going to introduce a new savings account for fishermen, then improving safety at sea. And we are also considering to go for this ILO convention on fisheries. And also we try to increase the production of value-added products, canned fish and dry fish. Then aquaculture and freshwater fisheries sector, actually the inland fisheries sector, there are several categories, but for food security, most important sector is culture-based fisheries sector. Culture-based fishery sector is the sector where we go and put fingerlings into rivers and reservoirs. Then people catch those fish when they grow up and consume and sell. So we try to increase the production of freshwater fish, and by that support rural livelihood and increase the per capita consumption of freshwater fish in Sri Lanka. Our present status of culture-based fisheries is that that is river-based. I have explained that we have about 11,000 reservoirs, more than 1,000 perennial reservoirs and 10,000 seasonal reservoirs. So what we do is our NAGDA, National Aquaculture Development Authority, stock fingerlings in those reservoirs. At present, we have two varieties, tilapia and carp. Tilapia 60% and carp 40%. So at the moment, last year, NAGDA stocked about 185 million fingerlings in those reservoirs, but we try to increase it up to 500 million fingerlings by 2025 for the optimum utilization of our reservoirs. The challenge here is fingerling production. Major limitation for increase stocking is fingerling production. Now NAGDA is trying to hand over tilapia production to private sector and communities, because tilapia is a prolific breeder, easy to breed. Now NAGDA is trying to hand over it to communities. And NAGDA is going to concentrate on carp breeding, carp production, and also, but NAGDA alone cannot produce 500 million fingerlings. They are trying to get the support of the private sector for breeding fry and fingerling production. So our way forward is increase availability by reducing post-harvest loss, improving fishing methods. We want to go for large modified vessels, increase volume of culture-based fisheries, increase production of canned fish and dried fish, continued supply of inputs like kerosene and diesel, and continued imports of dried straps, because we cannot produce enough dried straps in Sri Lanka. And finally, this is to increase the availability, to increase accessibility. We want to develop infrastructure especially in mid-country and rural areas. Otherwise, we cannot provide enough fish to those rural areas. Then we want to improve transport facilities like freezer trucks. Then we want to increase the production. Increased production will definitely pull down the price, and reduction of the price of inputs in the medium term, because we cannot immediately reduce the price of inputs like kerosene and diesel. Of course, there is a slight decrease of prices of inputs, but in the medium term, we think there will be a
Mr. Mr. Ranatunga, thank you so much for a very insightful presentation. You focused on not only about these coastal fisheries, not only about this deep sea fisheries, but also about inland fisheries. So if you have questions, maybe there is time for about a couple of questions. You can unmute yourself and ask that question. Before that, let me, Mr. Ranatunga, you also have muted yourself. May I ask you a question? You said that the spreads, the quality of there is a quality of the spreads in deep seas in Sri Lanka. that we cannot, Sri Lanka cannot produce sufficiently, because now when you go to the supermarkets and all that, we can see the spreads many coming from Maldives. Why is that?
Yeah, actually, we have spreads coming from not only from Maldives, Dubai, Indonesia, Thailand, because problem is in our sea areas, we have very limited quantity of spreads. I think one scientific reason is our shallow water area is very limited. Though we have a huge exclusive economic zone, our shallow water area is limited. Therefore, I think there are no very good breeding sites for spreads within our waters. That's why we have to keep importing spreads from other countries. But there are spread catching areas like Mullatiu and some areas in the southern province, but that quantity is not sufficient to cater to the demand in the market.
Thank you. And you very clearly focused on the inland fisheries as well. Am I correct if I say that inland fisheries of Sri Lanka is deeply, I mean, highly unutilized? Because now, even when we have these fuel-related issues in inland fisheries, still you can manage. What do you think about it?
Yes, that's true. There are various reasons for this situation. Actually, now NAGDA also a relatively very young organization because there was a time when the government was not very supportive about inland fisheries. The government policy was not very supportive towards inland fisheries at a certain time, but thereafter again now the government has realized the importance, significance of this sector, but we cannot fully utilize our resources due to various limitations. For example, now as I explained in my presentation, we need to produce huge amount of fingerlings. But I think this aquaculture sector, that means now shrimp farming, crab farming, these sectors are doing really well these days. But problem is they are more important for exports rather than local production. So I need not concentrate much on this area, since this discussion is mainly focused on food security of Sri Lanka. But we have a huge potential to develop these sectors, but that's a relatively slow process due to various difficulties we have, various restrictions we have. But now NAGDA has a very ambitious plan to develop the sector in the coming years, and we have also seen results. As I have explained, we have seen slight improvement in the inland fisheries sector, even in the production, but I think we have a lot more to do. The limitations are things like fingerling production. We need to have hatcheries, then we need a lot of investments to do those things. So we cannot do all these things overnight. That's a slow process.
Thank you, Mr. Ranatunga. I can see Mr. Amal Arunapriya has raised his hand. Mr. Arunapriya, you can ask a question.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Chandana. So, thank you very much, Mr. Dhammika. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So, first of all, congratulations, as you are very informative presentation. Thank you very much for the information. So, my question is very basic, but thing is, it is novel for us, because we are engaged in total crop production agriculture, but related to your subject area. So, what is the entrepreneurship program now going on for the canned fish industry? Is there any, there is a possibility? What are the steps you have taken and for the canned fish industry?
Yeah, actually, now as I have shown in my slide, there is a very good improvement in the canned fish industry. We could reduce imports, and we have increased our local production significantly. For example, now if we compare the production with 2020, 15, 2018, we have a very significant production right now. The thing is, there are some limitations. Now we have 12 canned fish manufacturing facilities. Actually, before 2019, we had only 6 facilities. Now, within last 2 years, we have got 6 new canned fish manufacturing factories in Sri Lanka, and a few more people are interested to enter into this industry. Thing is, there are some limitations. One limitation is raw material. They are using Linna fish for canned fish manufacturing. In Sri Lanka, that is the fish variety they use. But Linna is highly fish variety with a very high demand, because Linna is relatively cheap fish variety. Then a lot of people want to buy Linna. Then a lot of small time restaurants, like people who prepare lunch packets, those people also buy huge amount of Linna fish from the market. Then also Linna fish is used as a bait in multi-day fishing boats. Therefore, there is a very high demand for Linna fish, but there's a high demand for Linna fish, but then we support them to import. When there is no enough raw material in the market, we support them to import mackerel from overseas with the tax concession. That's how we support them when there is no enough Linna fish in the market. And Linna is also a seasonal fish. And now this is the Linna season, but after March next year, there will be a reduction of Linna catch. Again, then we have to support them to import mackerel. But at the moment, we are addressing their issues and trying to develop the canned fish industry. A lot of efforts are taken to increase the canned fish production in Sri Lanka. I think I have given you a reasonable answer.
Yeah, thank you, Ramika. So the taste may be different. Can't we use the tuna? Kelavalla, Balaya, Alagodua, something like that?
Yeah, we can. Actually, there are some enterprises where they produce, they can tuna. Even Sri Lankan market, there are some companies, but what our common people demand is not tuna cans. There is a very small demand for such varieties, but most of the people want to buy this traditional salmon tin. Then highest demand is for that variety, but they are trying to go for other varieties as well, but they are not in high demand.
Thank you, Dr. Thank you.
බොහොම ස්තුතියි මිස්ටර් අනුතුංග. තව ප්‍රශ්නයක් මොනවා හරි කාට හරි අහන්න තියෙනවද? අපිට එක ප්‍රශ්නයකට අවස්ථාව දෙන්න පුළුවන්. අපිට තව එක ප්‍රශ්නයකට අවස්ථාව දෙන්න පුළුවන්. ශ්‍රී ලංකාව කියන්නේ ඇත්තටම අපි කියනවා දූපතක් කියලා. ඒ දූපතට තියෙන කරදිය සමුද්‍රීය ඒ සම්පත අපි ඇත්තටම ඒක හරියාකාරව පාවිච්චි කරනවද කියන එක ගැන අපිට නැවත හිතා බලන්න අවස්ථාව. අපේ සම්පත්දායකයා මිස්ටර් ධම්මික රණතුංග එතුමා ප්‍රකාශ කරා දැන් ඒ දේවල් පිළිබඳ යම්කිසි ක්‍රියාමාර්ගයක් ගන්නවා. නමුත් ඒක ඉතාමත්ම හිමින් සිද්ධ වෙන්නේ කියලා. එතකොට මේ වගේ වෙලාවක ගෝලීය ආර්ථික වශයෙන් රටක් විදියට ගෝලීය වශයෙන් අපිට මේ පීඩනය දැනෙන වෙලාවක අපිට මීට වැඩිය දෙයක් කරන්න පුළුවන්ද? ඊළඟට අපේ මිර්ධිය සම්පත බලනකොට ඒකේ ලොකු අවස්ථාවක් තියෙනවා. ඉතින් අපි කියනවා ශ්‍රී ලංකාව පාරාදීසයක් කියලා. ඉතින් මේ පාරාදීසියේ ප්‍රයෝජනේ අපි හරියට ගන්නවද කියන එක අපිට හිතා බලන්න හොඳ අවස්ථාවක්. ඒ වගේම අපිට ඉදිරියට මේ පිළිබඳ යම්කිසි ක්‍රියාමාර්ගයකට අපිට සක්‍රීය දායකත්වයක් ලබා දෙන්න පුළුවන්. ඉතින් අපි ඉතාමත්ම ස්තුතිවන්ත වෙනවා අපේ සම්පත්දායක ධම්මික රණතුංග මහතාට, අධ්‍යක්ෂ ජෙනරාල් Fisheries Ministry එකේ ශ්‍රී ලංකා කෘෂිකර්ම ව්‍යාප්ති සංගමය කලින් කල අපි හැම වෙලේම අදහස් කරේ කාලීනව කෘෂිකර්මාන්තය නගා සිටවීමට ඒ පිළිබඳ අවශ්‍ය කරුණු සමාජගත කරලා ඒ හරහා හැම කෙනෙකුටම යම්කිසි බලගැන්වීමක් කිරීමට මූලිකත්වය ලබා දෙන්න. ඒ බලගැන්වීම අපිට සමහර වෙලාවකට කරන්න පුළුවන් යම්කිසි ප්‍රතිපත්ති සම්පාදනයෙන්. ප්‍රතිපත්ති සම්පාදනය වෙනකම්ම බලන් ඉන්නත් අවශ්‍ය නැහැ. අපිට කරන්න පුළුවන් ගොඩක් දේවල් තියෙනවා. ඉතින් මේ කාලීන වෙබිනා මාලාව තුළින් අපි අදහස් කරන්නේ ඒකයි. ඉතින් අපි ඉතාමත්ම ස්තුතිවන්ත වෙනවා ධම්මික රණතුංග මහතාට. ඉතාමත් කෙටි කාලයකින් අපේ ආරාධනය ඉතාමත්ම හොඳින් පිළි අරගෙන මේ අවස්ථාවට සහභාගී වෙලා අපි කවුරුත් දැනුවත් කිරීම ගැන, ඒ වගේම අපි අපේ ඊළඟ වෙබිනා මාලාව අපි